There is a quiet moment that most people experience, but rarely talk about. It is the moment when everything in your life seems to be moving, yet you feel strangely still inside. Your routines continue, your responsibilities are handled, your goals are being pursued. Yet something deeper begins asking a question that is difficult to ignore. Is this really the life I am meant to be living? This question does not appear because something is wrong. It appears because awareness has started to grow. For a long time, you may have lived according to expectations that were never consciously examined. Expectations about success, relationships, productivity, identity, and purpose. Many of these ideas were absorbed from the environment around you, long before you had the awareness to question them. As a result, a large part of your life may have been constructed from borrowed definitions, borrowed ideas of happiness, borrowed definitions of achievement, borrowed visions of what a meaningful life should look like. On the surface, everything can appear structured and stable, but internally there is a subtle tension because the foundation was never fully yours. Self-discovery begins when you stop running from that tension, when you stop distracting yourself from the quiet questions that appear during moments of reflection. Instead of pushing them away, you begin listening carefully. What am I actually seeking? What parts of my life feel authentic? And which parts feel performed? This is where real transformation starts. Not with dramatic decisions or sudden changes, but with honest awareness. The willingness to examine your life without immediate judgment. The willingness to admit that growth might require redefining ideas that once felt permanent. Once that awareness begins, something powerful happens. You start realizing that your life is not a fixed structure, but a living process. A process that can be redirected, refined, and expanded the moment you become conscious of the forces shaping it. From the moment you enter the world, identity begins forming around you. Family expectations, cultural standards, social roles, and early experiences slowly shape the way you see yourself. You learn what is praised and what is discouraged. You learn which behaviors bring approval and which ones bring criticism. Without realizing it, you begin constructing an identity that helps you navigate the environment around you. You become the responsible one, the quiet one, the ambitious one, the helper, the achiever, the independent one. These roles can feel natural because you have lived with them for so long, but many of them were formed through adaptation rather than conscious choice. The challenge appears later in life, when the identity you built for survival begins to conflict with the person you are becoming. The role that once protected you may now feel limiting. The behaviors that once brought validation may now feel exhausting. Yet letting go of these identities can feel frightening because they have defined you for years. This is why many people remain stuck, not because they lack potential, but because they are trying to evolve while holding tightly to an identity that no longer reflects their truth. They feel the pressure to grow, but also the pressure to remain consistent with the version of themselves others recognize. Self-discovery requires questioning these inherited identities. It requires asking a powerful question that many people avoid. If no one expected anything from me, who would I naturally become? What interests would I explore? What values would guide my decisions? What kind of life would I actually build? When you begin asking these questions honestly, the illusion of fixed identity starts to dissolve. You realize that who you are is not a rigid definition, but an evolving expression. The person you were 10 years ago served a purpose, but that version does not have to dictate the person you are allowed to become next. This realization can feel both liberating and uncomfortable. Liberation comes from the freedom to evolve. Discomfort comes from recognizing how much of your life may have been shaped by unconscious adaptation. But this awareness is not a loss. It is the beginning of authentic direction. Comfort is one of the most deceptive forces in human life. It feels safe, stable, and predictable, which makes it extremely attractive. When you find routines, relationships, or environments that minimize friction, the mind naturally wants to preserve them. Stability creates a sense of control. However, comfort often carries an invisible cost. When life becomes too predictable, curiosity slowly fades. When challenges disappear, growth slows down. When everything feels familiar, your potential begins operating far below its capacity. This does not happen suddenly. It happens gradually, in ways that are easy to justify. You postpone a new opportunity because the timing does not feel perfect. You avoid difficult conversations because maintaining peace feels easier. You delay personal goals because daily responsibilities seem more urgent. Over time, these small decisions accumulate. The life that once felt stable begins to feel stagnant, not because you are incapable of growth, but because comfort has quietly replaced exploration. The mind begins protecting familiarity instead of seeking expansion. The paradox is that comfort often feels like safety, but long-term stagnation creates a deeper form of dissatisfaction. Humans are naturally wired for development. When that internal drive is suppressed for too long, it begins to manifest as restlessness, boredom, or the sense that something important is missing. Growth requires stepping into spaces that feel uncertain at first. New skills, new environments, new conversations, new levels of responsibility. These experiences stretch your perception of what you are capable of handling. At the beginning, discomfort may appear as doubt or hesitation. The mind may question whether the effort is worth it. But with time, something powerful begins to happen. What once felt intimidating slowly becomes familiar. Your capacity expands, and the boundaries that once defined your limits begin to move. Self-awareness is one of the most underestimated skills a person can develop. Many people spend years improving external aspects of their lives while neglecting the internal patterns that shape their behavior. They work harder, learn more, and pursue bigger goals without fully understanding the forces driving their decisions. Without awareness, life becomes reactive. Situations trigger emotions. Emotions trigger behaviors, and behaviors create outcomes that often repeat the same patterns. You may notice similar frustrations appearing in different areas of your life, without clearly understanding why. Self-awareness interrupts this automatic cycle. It allows you to step back and observe your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without immediately acting on them. Instead of being controlled by impulses, you begin studying them. For example, when you feel sudden frustration, awareness invites you to pause and examine the emotion rather than instantly reacting. What triggered this response? Is it connected to the present situation, or is it tied to an older experience that still influences your perception? This level of reflection creates distance between stimulus and reaction. That distance is where real freedom exists. When you understand your internal patterns, you are no longer forced to repeat them unconsciously. Self-awareness also reveals your deeper motivations. It helps you distinguish between desires that come from genuine passion and desires that come from comparison or insecurity. Many goals that initially appear important lose their power once you understand the emotional drivers behind them. As awareness grows, decision-making becomes clearer. Instead of reacting impulsively or following external pressure, you begin acting from understanding. Your choices become more aligned with your values. Your direction becomes more intentional, and your life gradually shifts from reaction to conscious design. One of the biggest challenges in self-discovery is learning to trust your own inner guidance again. For many people, this trust has been weakened over time. Constant exposure to opinions, advice, criticism, and comparison slowly shifts attention outward. Decisions begin to rely more on external approval than internal clarity. At first, this may seem harmless. Seeking guidance from others can be valuable, especially when learning something new. But when external voices become louder than your own intuition, confusion begins to appear. You may start questioning even the simplest decisions. Should I pursue this path or choose something safer? Should I express this idea or stay quiet to avoid judgment? Should I follow what excites me or what seems more socially acceptable? Over time, this uncertainty erodes confidence. You begin feeling as if every decision requires validation before it can be trusted. The more you depend on external reassurance, the weaker your internal voice becomes. Rebuilding this trust requires patience. Your intuition becomes stronger when it is practiced, not when it is ignored. This begins with small decisions, paying attention to what genuinely resonates with you, instead of immediately consulting outside opinions. You may notice subtle signals within yourself, a sense of curiosity when something aligns with your values, a sense of resistance when something conflicts with your authenticity. These signals are often quiet, but they become clearer the more you listen. Trust does not mean assuming you will always be correct. It means respecting your ability to learn from your experiences. When decisions come from awareness rather than fear or pressure, even mistakes become valuable information rather than evidence of failure. The ultimate purpose of self-discovery is not simply understanding yourself. It is using that understanding to intentionally shape the life you are building. Awareness without action becomes reflection without transformation. Once you begin recognizing your values, motivations, and patterns, your decisions naturally begin shifting. You start asking deeper questions about the direction of your life. Are my daily actions aligned with what truly matters to me? Am I building a future that reflects my authentic priorities? For many people, this stage requires letting go of paths that once seemed necessary. A career direction chosen for approval rather than passion. Relationships maintained out of habit rather than connection. Goals pursued for status rather than meaning. Letting go does not always mean dramatic change. Sometimes it means adjusting priorities, creating space for interests that were previously ignored, setting boundaries that protect your energy, making gradual shifts that bring your life closer to alignment. Designing a meaningful life is a continuous process. As you grow, your understanding of yourself evolves. New experiences reveal new values, new ambitions, and new possibilities. The person you are becoming today will naturally have different aspirations than the person you were years ago. What matters is remaining conscious throughout the process. When you live with awareness, you stop drifting through expectations and begin navigating with intention. Your life becomes less about reacting to circumstances and more about consciously shaping the direction you want to explore. And that is where true self-improvement begins. Not in chasing an ideal version of yourself created by the world, but in steadily becoming the most authentic expression of who you already are.